I semi-often get asked to create kind of Quad Cortex presets for people or do more Quad Cortex kind of videos. I don't actually have a Quad Cortex anymore. So I was on the wait list from launch at NAMM, and even back then, the kind of main selling point of the Quad Cortex was, you know us for our plugins, and there was a specific quote that they said that anyone serious about plugins should make hardware. Now got to the point where NeuroDSP have managed to actually port across a couple of plugins onto the hardware, and I wanted to talk about that in this video, whether it was actually what you expected and what I expected. This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. So, first of all, if NeuroDSP want me to make some Quad Cortex videos, they could send me one like they've sent everyone else and their mum a free one. I'm kind of kidding about that, although Doug did used to send me messages on Facebook Messenger and stuff like that, but not anymore. Anyway, so I can actually create presets for you again, because with the Archetype Plini X, which I have, which they sent me a long time ago to do some videos with, I can actually create a preset that you can load onto your Quad Cortex. So if you want those tones from the intro, I'll put them up into my NeuroDSP folder. I guess you have to use the Buy Me a Coffee link to get hold of that. But anyway, I was really enjoying it. Now, the thing that I think is really great about the plugins, specifically NeuroDSP, is that they look great and also sound really good. So there's two aspects there. So I think if you can load these presets straight into your Quad Cortex, then you've at least got the sound aspect. So I think initially at launch, there was a lot of people that were kind of like, I kind of find it a bit difficult to get tones that I like out of this compared to the plugins, because the whole workflow is totally different. Now, if the workflow and the curation of the plugins is such a big deal, which I really think it is, and I'll go into building some presets and show you some of the stuff in a second, then if I told you back in 2020 or whatever, that when the plugins get ported across, they'll essentially just be like then using Helix Native, right? I don't think you'd have sold as many plugins, right? Because it's not as attractive. So when you see, for instance, a preset that has been ported across from Archetype Plini, it kind of just looks like a Helix preset, and that really kind of wasn't the selling point for me of the initial plugins. So I don't know if you guys feel the same about that, or whether you think it doesn't really matter. And if you've got a Quad Cortex, how would you go about building presets? Would you still build them in Plini X? Because I think as an editor and as an experience and workflow, I kind of prefer kind of building a preset in Plini. It kind of feels a little bit more connected to the real world in kind of skeuomorphic design, as well as being kind of simpler, right? So you get all your pedals on one page, you get your amp, you get your cab settings, which I think that's a real benefit as well. And your delay and reverb on one page as well, versus editing on the actual device or in the editor. Quad Cortex editor is now much more like Helix native, which I think is actually not the best in terms of workflow, and not the best in terms of an inspirational kind of looking thing. So I just wanted to kind of float that out there as an idea, because I thought this is kind of not what I expected or what I had hoped. I kind of hoped maybe that you'd get something a little bit more like the Fender ToneMaster Pro, which for all the other things that I don't like about the ToneMaster Pro, I kind of feel like that UI element of it at least is kind of pushing things forward a bit where other modelers hadn't before. Whereas the Quad Cortex, how they've implemented these plugins, kind of just is basically looks the same as the Helix did in 2015. So to me was not kind of the step up in terms of improvement that I wanted. But I can create tones for you again because I've got Archetype Plini X, and I think it actually sounds great. So let's jump over to the computer and I'm going to edit it. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. Is it just complaining for the sake of it, or did you think that this might end up being a bit different? Kind of naively, I thought if you're going to port the plugins, if it's going to take, you know, nearly 4 years, the end result would be, I hoped, a little bit more impressive than just having the blocks literally translated across, and then you've got like 16 blocks in a preset that are available, and that's Plini now. Yeah, let me know your thoughts. So here I've got the plugin, right? And this is just a fantastic workflow, right? You've got here, you've got all your effects in one spot. You know, you can switch your amp, do all the stuff you know about. The cab interface is inviting, it's kind of fresh looking. And you know how good looking a lot of the DSP, Neuro DSP plugins can be. And it's just kind of a joy to use, right? You just got the things you need where you need them, and I think that's why these things have taken off so well. And relatively, I think plugins have been, you know, quite a big thing that a lot of folks have got a lot of fun out of, a lot of use as well. So I just put together these presets which I was using for the intro, making use of this, the JCM 800 style amp. Really simple preset actually. So in terms of building this on the Quad Cortex, all it would be this Plini amp with the gain at about 4.3-ish, bass, mids and treble all halfway, the bright switch on the master up full, and then I've dropped the output a bit. Then it's just standard kind of cab vibes, dynamic 57 and ribbon, and no EQ. And then I've got a chorus here with the depth nice and low and the rate at halfway. We're on the spatial, not the vintage, and the mix is halfway. And then okay, and then I also had this JC push lead, which I think what I did was up the gain here So you would use your scenes, I guess, on the Quad Cortex to achieve this. Bass, mids and treble as such. Bright switch on. And all that comes on is really the delay, which I've got the mix down nice and low. You can't actually see what the settings are here either, can you? Anyway, so mix nice and low. And the tap saturation and tap mod off, and the tone all the way up. But it sounds really beautiful to me. So yeah, I just wanted to show you just that in general, I think, because to me, I love the workflow of these types of plugins, and it's something that I use Helix Native all the time. But I have to say, I think in terms of something inspiring to play, that the Neural DSP stuff does beat it in terms of what you're looking at on the screen, and being able to quickly get in and change stuff is just, I think this is the optimal workflow in a lot of ways for a digital modeling rig. That's what I was kind of hoping we might get something closer to when the Quad Cortex did port them across, but it's kind of not what the reality is. Let me know if you've been happy with the way they've been ported across or not. Maybe I'm just moaning about nothing. And if you want these particular presets, use the Buy Me a Coffee link, and I'll drop them into that folder there. But yeah, Plini, particularly with that chorus there, I really do dig some of those tones. I think it'd be really interesting if Neural DSP or someone that has both plugins and the sort of normal modeling approach, you know, like we're used to in the modeling world, it being this fairly complex like situation where you've got lots of different things going on, lots of blocks and stuff, to instead implement something. And this is kind of what I had in mind when Neural DSP said we're going to bring plugins to the hardware. I kind of thought that could be really interesting in terms of bringing like a simplified mode to the Quad Cortex, because I think so many people find it difficult on whatever device to build presets, like a simplified arcade mode where it's like, well, this is basically going to look like the Plini plugin when you're editing, because that is such a great kind of workflow. I think there is an opportunity here for someone to do something like that. And as you can see from the Tone Master Pro, it's not necessarily like a graphics thing where, you know, these things aren't at all possible. Like maybe it wouldn't look as pretty as Plini does in full, but the Tone Master Pro manages to make things look nice on the screen. It's just, I think it would be quite an interesting vibe to have a bit more of a simplified workflow, simplified view on stuff, and be different to anything that's come before. I don't know actually how you'd implement it. Of course, I'm not a developer or anything like that, but I thought that maybe when this idea of bringing plugins across could have been something a little bit more like that. And it does raise for me a few questions, like how are they going to implement room mics when that comes along? Is that going to be part of the cab block? You're going to then say, right, in the cab block you've got 2 additional room mics. If you've got like a cab plus block which has these extra room mics built in, which is going to use quite a bit of DSP, but you know, it will then essentially be loading what, like 4 IRs. You have 1 mic, 2 mics, and then 2 room mics maybe. I don't know, but either way it's going to be again slightly different to how it's implemented in the plugin world, I guess.